Muy buenas noches, queridos televidentes. Good evening, friends of Manhattan Neighborhood Network. My name is Maria Luna, and I am just so happy to once again be able to bring my monthly program, Diálogo Democrático, Democratic Dialogue, a program that I am really happy to do because my intention is always to bring information, education to the people who watches these channels. This evening, I am glad to have very special people to address us and to have a dialogue. Each month, I usually bring someone invited to discuss whatever issue we have decided to talk about. But tonight, I am really glad to have my distinguished friend, Assemblyman Alfred Taylor, who is from the 71st Assembly District, and also Nobles Crawford, who is a state committee, my co-leader as a state committee, and the same district. So welcome, both of you.
Hi,
Thank
good
you so
evening,
much,
and
Maria.
welcome to you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. Good to see you, Maria. Noble, good to see you. As you all can perhaps surmise, I am here in my office in the Albany facility. So this is a understanding. We're having a conversation about what in the name of whatever we're doing here in Albany. We're down to possibly 72 hours. There's a bean count to see exactly what we leave in the wee hours of Friday or wee hours of Thursday. And I got to have Thursday. It's going to be wee hours on Saturday. But we're down to the final. And right now, we did a lot of bills yesterday. Today, there's a lot of conversation on gun control. But let me stop back and let you guys navigate. But I am glad to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Maria. I understand it's been 6 years since the
Right.
last time I was here, almost 6 years. I don't understand why your assembly member can't come in at least once a month and be able to say something. I don't know.
But you're
But
too
I'll try to be
busy.
better than I was last time, so you
No,
extend another
okay.
invitation.
This is what we need to talk about because people do not realize the work of the assemblyman or the assembly member, local and also in Albany, and how you have to take, time to travel, take care of your personal, life, and also dedicate all that time to the business of the state in our district. And I also have to thank you all for taking your time from your busy schedule to be here with us once again. So,
Here, here.
it's anytime they would
So,
like to come, let them
hey,
know.
well, thank you
Okay.
because after a while, you'd be like, I know he's not trying to come back again. Don't answer the phone. But no, thank you so much. I am excited to be here. As I listen to you speak, Maria, there are a lot of things that we do. I often tell people I have an 8-day week. I am a full-time legislator. I am also wearing the title as a district leader, but I also have the title of being a pastor in a church in the community. And it's almost like when we were younger, they had these cabs. I think they were yellow, and they would come through the neighborhoods at various communities because they didn't really serve us that well. And they would pull the hammer down, and when the hammer, then it starts. Or they'll have on top off duty, and when you try to hail them, they won't stop. I'm never off
I
duty.
remember
I
those
love the work
days.
that I
I'm
do.
not that young.
I have one of the best jobs in the world, Noble. Good to see you. I actually get to work, live, and serve in the community in which I grew up in, went to school in, was educated, not only in the streets, but also in the institutions that were there, whether it was George Washington High School, PS 28, PS 128, where I actually taught. So I enjoy what I do. And typically, for the folks that don't know, I'm just going to give you a day in a week of the assemblyman. I will leave New York City on a Sunday afternoon, make it to Albany somewhere around sunset. Typically, I try to get here by 7 o'clock. Sometimes it's midnight when you get here, but that's after a day of work in New York. And work for me is enjoyable. So whether I'm talking to someone that's having a housing crisis, whether we're at one of the local precincts and we're celebrating the unity of law enforcement in the community and our youth, or whether it's the renaming of a community pub that was I would say it was one of the glue that kept our community and distinguished us from everybody else when crack was running rampant in New York City. And I must give kudos to Coogan's because they opened up in
Oh,
'85 right at the onset of crack. And so, but it was a stable place in a community that was shifting, and they anchored it up until the pandemic hit. So, big kudos to them and the shout out for being able to go out and participate in what former assembly member and now current city council member, oh my goodness,
yeah.
oh my,
Car-
Della Rosa, Carmen Della Rosa.
Carmen de la Rosa. Carmen de
Listen,
la Rosa. Yeah.
yes, we were
Yeah.
here till
Well,
after
that,
10
this
o'clock
is good
last
that
night.
you mentioned it because this is good that you mentioned it because Noble Crawford, which I didn't know until recently, that we need to also speak to the issue of the three Democratic club within our 71st Assembly District, the Tioga
We
Carver.
we can't have I can't have that conversation.
No, I don't know.
Hmm.
But the reason why I mentioned that is because that's how I met Noble.
Okay,
Because of the
That's right.
unity and having and keeping our district together and making sure
okay.
that things
Yep.
go smoothly.
So
So,
the backstory is yes.
right. So, hi, Noble.
Well,
I'd love to,
you know,
to hear a
it's
little bit from
hey,
you
hey,
now, and then we'll go back to the assembly.
sure. Look, I
Can I make this louder?
sorry about that. It might be my connection, but if not, if it is, let me know. But it's funny that you mentioned that, Maria, because I've been pretty active in the community since I moved here in 2008, and I've always known you. You're such a champion in our neighborhood. And the funniest part about this is I did not know till today you were a media maven. So, running a TV station with all the things you do in our community, I have no idea how you do it. I'm really happy to be here. I really appreciate the invite. There's a lot of things going on in our community. I mean, Assemblyman Al Taylor mentioned a whole bunch of them that I can't wait to talk about. But you and I being on the community board, we're 3 days a week. I mean, really, community board is every day being in the neighborhood. We're here to talk about those things, at those times as well. And it's always awesome to talk about it with you. So I'm down to talk about whatever subject, and really looking forward to it. I appreciate it.
Right. I am really interested in listening to most of the legislations that Assembly Member Taylor would like to speak about what he's doing in Albany right now. I know that this cannot be a political discussion because of his right now where he's in session. We can do that when he comes down to the city. But now I'll since well forgive me, I shouldn't say Al, assembly
No,
person.
absolutely. No,
I always have to
Since I
remember that
know
too.
Al,
no.
I know Al since he was like a very, very young person, so I don't want to date myself, but I mean, fortunately,
Thank you.
unfortunately, I've been around here in the 71st Assembly District for a long time, and I hope to stay for a long time also. But anyway, Al,
Thank you.
you're still in session. What do you think are the most important things that have been discussed before we move on to the next budget?
I think
Hmm.
there are a lot of important issues. I just want to flag and go back to something that Noble touched on, and that is how we interact with each other in the community at various times. And I was reminded as I heard him speak about you and Juana, and you all were there in the lobby of your building, making sure that not you, but the residents north and south, east and west of you were able to receive meals when COVID hit hard. And people were on a shoestring budget if they even had a budget. So I just want to pause there and say thank you for all your community work. And so this legislative job is partnership, partnering with community leaders, whether they have a title or not. There were so many of them that you summoned them, and then there were a lot of neighbors that came. Not that they needed anything, but they came to pick up for other people that couldn't come out. So it's important that we acknowledge, as legislators. I heard someone say all politics is local, because if you're not at home and hearing the voices of your community, in responding to them in real time, then how effective do you hope to be, and how long do you think you're going to remain? So we represent, as a legislator here in the 71st Assembly District, a very robust community. So whether it's the northern part of Harlem, or whether it's Washington Heights, whether it's Hamilton Heights, whether it's Inwood and little enclaves, whether you want to say Sugar Hill, all of those are rich communities, and each one is a little bit different than the other, but they want the basics. Can I get on a train? Can I catch a bus? Can I get heat? Can I get hot water? Can I get an affordable apartment? And am I getting the services that I'm paying for as a tax payer? And are there safe places for my children? We've had an eruption of gun violence throughout our nation. New York City is certainly no stranger to it, and gun violence is up. So right now, there are a lot of bills, as I'm talking to you right now, they're on the floor and people are talking about them. The bill that you can't hear that's on the floor right now is unless I missed it while we were coming on, the bill is introduced by Pat Fahey. Now that bill requires that social media do something. So, and they're referencing the shooting in Buffalo. And so one or two of the social medias pulled it right down when it took place, but there are others that continue to run it, and they continue to post it right now. So there should be some guardrails on how they act. This piece of legislation is not saying what you must do, but you must do something. I'm not sure how the enforcement. So that's on debate right now. There are a lot of different conversations. I'm sorry, not conversations. There are different pieces of legislation to combat gun violence, and how you're able to track guns that are coming into our city, through our state illegally. Then also those pieces of which we need federal help to make sure that those semi-automatic weapons, the AKs, are not readily available for 18-year-olds. They're changing the age if you have to buy one, if you're going to be able to buy one. When I say if you're going to be able to buy one, we have to look at the federal government and some of the guidelines that they've not done. So we can create some legislation, but if we're not careful, that legislation will be overturned in court because it's out of step with what the Supreme Court is saying.
Okay, let me just
yes.
hold you there for a second, because you
I'm
mentioned
excited. That
something
sounded
about
awesome.
social media. I know for a fact that Nobles is an expert, is a whiz on social media, and he can tell us a little bit, or as much as he wants to speak on that issue, and
Oh, you're
how
the best.
we can take advantage of his knowledge and channel that to the people who are watching our show.
Oh,
So Noble, I know that we can talk about our work in the community board, that you have been extremely important, taking care of housing issues, taking care of security, you
in our
taking
parks.
care of the education, since you have young kids. Now you have two little beautiful young girls that
Thank you.
one of the priorities has to be their education. So
Yep.
maybe you can tell me, because
Oh, I would love
also
to.
you've been working, putting together some programs from social media
Yep.
for our, party. And I need to say that we are Democrats, so the word Democrat is going to come in and out of our conversation a lot. So I don't want them to think that we are
Oh, we'll
just
say
doing that
Republicans too
as
at a certain
Democrats. We are
point.
doing that because we are community people.
Yep.
Absolutely, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on a Republican if they'll invite me.
Right. Likewise. Well, thank you so much for the question, Maria. Very thoughtful. The consummate host, as we talked about before. I didn't win this Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award behind me from not knowing the internet. But that's also not the only thing that we know about. Honestly, our cultivation in technology. And when you think about, and I'm a big sci-fi guy, so you got to bear with me for a second. When you think about, humans being on this earth for 100,000 years, our tools just got better, but we're the same old 100,000-year type of human here. And so the tool of the internet, right, recently discovered by us, maybe like in the full consumer form that we know now in the last like 20, 23 years. Because I do remember a time very much so when I was 16 and less, where we didn't have any of this. I shaved today, so I might look in my 20s, but trust me, you double that, and then we're talking business. But when it comes to the internet and its sway on different parts of our community, it's a double-edged sword. It opens us up to more insight, to experiences with more and new people. That's the beautiful part of the internet. That's what we thought we had when we made it back in the mid 90s to be into consumer form. But we all now are starting to have a deeper conversation about the other side of that double-edged sword. How, yes, it does bring communities together, but it brings communities together in many different ways that might not be so healthy to the collective nature of our country. The biggest thing that I would say when it comes to, any legislation or any way forward for a party is that there's not a one-size-fits-all way to go about here. The internet is out there. People are going to get the information they want, no matter how they want to get it. You can't ban certain things or what have you and not find it. And so when we're thinking about information, it's okay, we need to put the good information out there as much as we can in a smart, strategic way, because the other side is very smart and strategic about making a little bit of people feel like a lot of people, right? And so when it comes to the Democratic Party, I brought a proposal to the chairman, Jay Jacobs, and also to amazing state committee members like you, Maria, to create a Democratic Party messaging committee. That was voted in at our last conference back in February, and now I'm the chairman of the New York State Democrats Messaging Committee by the state committee. And what we look to do is put the good information out there, the good information about bail reform, for instance, in terms of being able to have an equitable criminal justice way forward. Talk about equity, equitable rollout of marijuana, the SAFE Act that I know that's being talked about right now in the legislature, opening voting rights access so we don't lose our ballot initiatives like we did last time around opening up voting to more people and making it more inclusive for all different types of people. And so when it comes to refuting the bad messages from the internet, or like the way that a small group of people can shift public opinion, it's really important to look at the mechanics, but also making sure we have the defense and make sure that's funded with the best people.
Right. When I stopped the assembly member Taylor for going into the other side, the other conversation that legislation, is because of that particular information that you just gave us. That what importance it is, because the two little criminals, when I say little criminal, the one in Buffalo and the one in Uvalde, Texas, use the media to get information, to buy guns, to get knowledge how to put things together. So the danger of the that opportunity of liberty, of freedom that we have, it could be channeled the wrong way as opposed to the good way. And
Can I
this
build on one thing?
Legislation could be take advantage of what we are discussing now, so we can maybe I can really deal with that also in Albany, because it's extremely important that young people have the means and the will of putting some so many thousands of people in danger because they're using the media for the wrong reason, instead of getting an education or reading a book or doing something productive, instead of doing damage to our society.
But also too, there is something here in this 30 seconds. Let me hand it off to Assemblyman Al Taylor. Is look, again, I've been around since the 80s, and in the 90s it was gangster rap. In the early aughts, it was violent video games. Now it's the internet. The thing is, as I said before, the information and the means are going to be there. The root of the causes of the issue is what I hope the legislation is certainly focusing on, and that is disenfranchisement of our youth and making sure we invest in youth activities, making sure we have infrastructure there for jobs for 18-year-olds and up, like really good paying jobs that also are giving them transferable skills. Trade, we need to invest in trade schools. Like all of these things are part of the root. And every single time there's going to be different kinds of information getting people to certain things. We got to go for the root causes. I'm sorry, Assemblyman Al Taylor. I don't usually jump in front of you.
No, that's
but I had
great.
to build on that.
No, but that's great. You toss it up, we can hit it. So when we're talking, let's stay there when we're talking about communication, because the vehicle of information exists. Our responsibilities is making sure what's coming through it, how is it sent, and does it I'm going to call it BG, whatever it is. And Noble, you touched on, you talked about gangster rap. Oh, let's go back in the 90s, and music as we understood it, rap was already there, but rap was pushing the First Amendment. And someone, I want to say Luke Skywalker, and that Miami bass sound had crossed into an area that was unknown to everybody, and it went to court, to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And when you think about, and again, this is messaging, this is about how we've evolved over all the hundreds of years we've been here. And let's just, look at it and say, when I was a young person and I watched television, the FCC had a different group of people there, and the standards were different. Give you an example. So when you looked at I Love Lucy, Ricky and his wife stayed in 2 separate beds. Everybody always had separate beds. You never saw couples in a bed together. Just out there in terms of where we were at as a culture, as a country. And then let's fast forward, and you have Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker has some lyrics, and there were some lyrics. And the people Uncle Lou, and the people sitting in the Supreme Court, very conservative, ruled that these people, this artist, this organization, and that label had a right to say every last thing they said, every bleepity bleep bleep thing they wanted to say, but they had to put a label on it and say parental advisory, and then they put different categories on it. But it's all about communication, so it's there. So how do we get ahead of this? I'm working closely with Clyde Vernell, Assembly Member Clyde Vernell, and I call him the coolest geek I know, because he's talking about the Bitcoins. He's talking about technology. He's talking about how do we bring this in, so we're not just operating in the now, but what does it look like in 20 years? One thing that we realized that we already knew, but the world saw, Maria, was that when COVID hit, we had a broadband issue. Aside from getting the equipment, even if every child in New York City had it, they could not log on all at the same time because the system in place would not allow it. One of the great things that we do know, and I'm so happy I was on a conversation about 2 weeks ago, is that NYCHA is now providing, with the support, I forgot the name of the organization, but they're providing broadband so everybody in NYCHA can have access to the internet. Amazing. And it's long overdue, because who are the people that are most impacted? It's going to be the black and browns and those that are financially impoverished and they can't get ahead. And if we don't have technology, I'm not talking about a textbook, but real technology in a real way, we can't get there. So I want to come back to the violence, and we talk about, and I love it. I'm just going to stay right there on Noble, because Noble said something, and I'm going to ride it a little bit more, and it really deals with the messaging. And then I listened to Maria, and Maria referenced, this group of people, and then I think Noble talked about the gangster rap, and everything is perception. And what is it that you believe, and where are you getting that belief from? Is it Fox? Is it the internet? Is it your local, what you see out of the window? Because I'm inclined to believe that more black and brown are prepared and willing to, not prepared, but are ready and want to go to higher learning if given an opportunity, or a trade school. But we don't see that because we're covered with the negativity. I had the pleasure of going to the Denny Farrell State Park before COVID shut down. And I watched the, oh my goodness, I want to say Urban League. I watched over 3,000 kids that day, young people from all across the community and the state, come in just to register for college. And some of them were receiving an acceptance right there. They would ring the bell every time someone was accepted. And what amazed me most, and I was so thrilled and excited by it, so as a parent, as a community person, you can take people somewhere and say, okay, I want y'all to stand on that line, and and you watch them. But these young people did not have that. They had somebody that got them in the room, and they could have easily went and sat on the bleachers in there, but they stood on lines and endless lines so that they could get into college, and there was such a synergy that they understood that they were feeding off each other. Well, where'd you get in at? We got it, and some of them didn't even think it was possible. They waived the entrance fee, and people were getting accepted into college right there. And we have to see more of that, but not only see that, but you have to message that. I should not have been the only one to see that. That should have been on Fox News. That should have been on all the social media. But we only show. So we have to be careful. And communication is a message sent and a message received. What did you hear? I know what I said, but what did you hear? And I don't know what you have until you start to feed it back to me. Okay, communication 101. I was a communication major.
In those life experiences, and those like life experiences you're talking about. So my parents got out of Jim Crow South, North Carolina and Georgia in 1955 with when they were born, but don't tell my parents I said that. But still though, education was their ticket out. And in education in any form, people get education from the military, folks get education from trade, folks get education from traditional college. Wherever they want to go, we need to be there for our youth to be able to fund them. I mean, you want to talk about the campaign for fiscal equity here in New York City. That's a Manhattan issue. New York City is an issue. We're owed money from the state for our education system and our kids, and we still don't have that money yet. We're doing better, but we still don't have that money yet, nowhere near it. And so it's like all of those things. We keep discounting our kids. We keep taking money from them. That is the only way that we can give the good messaging in terms of this is what life can look like, giving them the opportunities that can now combat the message they might see in other darker corners of the internet. It's going to be there, folks. We need to be able to give all the support from the side that means the most for our community.
So I am so happy that you're saying that. So Al can bring that message and he understands why we are
tuck it in that legislation.
Particular issue. And on point, recently we just attended the co-naming of Coogan's Way, which is a restaurant in our community that closed a few years back. And after the ceremony, we went to the Armory for a reception, and things like that. The Armory right now have a program called College Prep, which is free. Every student that wants to come to go to college is prepared there and given the opportunities to apply to big colleges. We're talking about the major colleges, Yale, Harvard, Howard, Columbia, and everything else. 99% of the students that have been prepared at the Armory have been accepted to colleges all over. We say amazing. 4 years tuition paid, fully paid. So those are the messages that we need to send to our young people. There are opportunities, and I urge our young people to take advantage instead of just music is fine. I love to dance, I love to sing, I love to read a poem, but there is another aspect for their future, because this is the generation that we expect are going to take care of us when we are sitting on a wheelchair. But anyway, so those are things that are important. And when I thought about the program for today, so I said to my sister Juana, what should be,
Shout out to Juana.
Juana.
So anyway, and she says, well, there's an opportunity. There's going to be a primary on June 28th, and we are all going to be affected by that and whatever. But these are subjects that people that are watching the show, that are reading the newspaper, should be aware that we are urging the legislators to come up with better opportunities to people who look like us. I mean, look at this thing. One thing that I need to add. I am the district leader. I'm a co-leader of the Assemblyman Part A, and also then I'm a state committee co-leader with. I mean, I have to say it because people are going to notice. They're not stupid. So anyway, so I'm happy that we are discussing this because these are major issues for our district and how we can move forward. Gun control, the crime. How can we deal with that thing? People shooting. Uvalde, Texas. We are, right now, seeing funerals. The Buffalo, 9 people and, other people that are hurt. What can we do? Al, can you just give us a little,
I always like, and I don't think there's one answer to how we get it done, but we have to come at it from a holistic point, holistic perspective. So one, what would it look like? And if we were able in New York State to make sure that diversity is being taught on every level of education from pre-K all the way to 12th grade, and even in our higher learning institutions, because somewhere along the line, I do not believe that this young man had an opportunity to be immersed in various cultures, and he was
Right.
only looking at life from one perspective.
Right.
And I think if we are intentional and we go after that, we can start to change the narrative. Um, what bothers me is we are in a progressive state, so they say. But what happened in Buffalo would have been something that one would have thought would have happened in the backwoods of Georgia somewhere or Mississippi. But hatred has no primary zip code. It is
Mhm.
broad. It is everywhere. And every
Mhm.
community is there. And we are afraid to speak truth. And I don't mean just blabbing off your mouth, but unless we have those
Mhm.
conversations and go into rooms where we're not comfortable and hear other people,
Mhm.
we're never going to get there. So we have to have those conversations. We have to be intentional about those things. And one of the things that we legislate a lot about, we advocate for this people group, we advocate for this sexual group and their orientation. That's great. But we have to be, I'm going to say this, intentional about saving black lives, period. Not to be apologetic, but what does it look like when we talk about what's in? And when we look at who is most likely to be a victim, yeah, we say black and brown, but the chances are that person that's going to be in trouble is going to be a black person that kills another black person. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the Latino communities. I'm saying primarily when you look at officers that have killed blacks, it's mostly a black person that's being killed. And I have an issue from the time I may have been 10 or 11 years old. I remember Clifford Glover was killed by a police officer. He was 11 years old, or 10. Now, imagine hearing that on the radio as you're getting ready to go to school. It sears your mind and it stays there forever. And everything after that, whether it's Michael Stewart, whether it's Eric Garner, wherever it is, it's constantly the same thing. And even when you look at officers that shoot each other in friendly fire, it's a white cop that has shot a black cop, not done anything wrong, but there's this stigma, and we have to open that up and have that conversation. I had a conversation with the chancellor. Was it the chancellor? And I said, what do we need to do to make sure for the SED, State Education
Education
Department,
commission.
what do we need to do this? And he says, my takeaway, I'm paraphrasing, that unless there's a real New York State constitutional shift, the state education department cannot make any one of the 61 or 70, no, there are over 700 school districts. They cannot make any one of those school districts do anything they don't want to do. So it looks like this. I want you to talk more about the Hispanic, whatever. Just let's throw that out there. And then you throw that out and say, are you teaching that? Are you talking about that? And they can say, yes, we had kids come in for one day with a flag of whatever, Hispanic, whatever. I'm being facetious here. And that qualifies that subject. And it needs to be with intentionality and deep in. And until we change the New York State Constitution, they make recommendations, but it does not have to happen. And when we talk about the Holocaust, it is going down. Everybody's up, they're hearing, they're listening, and it's unapologetic. And God bless it, we need to do that. But that's not the only people group that have gone through tragedies and continue to have people with their foot on their neck. So we have to level the playing field and be as conscious about that. And again, not to be apologetic for being black. Let's have that conversation. So what would it look like if we take that and we are intentionally focused there? So those are some of the conversations that we're having in this legislative body. I'm very passionate about it because I have more time behind me than I have in the future, and we have to get this right. Our communities need it. And when we look at, I got to come back to Coogan's. When we were living in a culture where crack showed up in a massive way in an urban city, it was right there in the heights. But when you go to a Coogan's, the person that was responsible for changing the beds and the bedpans was sitting right there next to the person that was doing a 5-hour operation, or the person that just came off a shift from patrolling our community. That was community at its best. And those are the models that we need to have other people emulate and have those real conversations. More what's the word I'm looking for? More drama, more beef was resolved in there, in that space. I remember sitting with a guy that spent almost 10 years in Sing Sing, and he was coming home. And I remember sitting in there with another person that was responsible for him going there for what he did. And these guys, they sat there, they hugged and they cried, and the beef was over. And those are the untold stories that happen in a Coogan. Those are the untold stories that happen when community respects community and you have a neutral place to be. Come on, Noble.
There's a couple things that I gotta talk about because you preach it over there. You running it, right? A couple things, Maria. When it comes to, like, we were talking about messaging, right? And the message here is gun rights. It's not gun control, it's gun rights. Universal background checks. What we can do from the smallest grassroots person that talks to their friend all the way up to the president of this United States is continue to have the conversation on it. If you're not writing legislation, that's okay. If you're not leading protests, that's okay. Continue to have the conversation. Universal background checks. First and foremost, we have to strengthen the registration for these guns. We need to also strengthen our civil rights laws when it comes to hate crimes, especially against disenfranchised minorities, Asians, African Americans, the Jewish folks. Like, we need to strengthen all of these things at once. As Assemblyman Al Taylor said, it's a whole bunch of different points to get to healthy gun rights here. And to do that, red flag laws are talking about that. Red flag laws also should extend to the police. Right now, they don't extend to the police, but they should. So that is when it comes to, gun rights, and we need to be changing the message. We need responsible people with guns, and honestly, there needs to be a lot that happens there all at the same time. That being said, criminal justice reform, law enforcement accountability. I'll say something a little bit wild here, but I've been saying it for a long time. We need to be giving the cops raises at the same time as insuring cops. Like any doctor, like any dentist, if they have malpractice, they get sued. They personally get sued, right? These are professional positions where your life is in these people's hands. Same thing should be with the law enforcement. So, qualified immunity. We actually in the city did something about qualified immunity recently. And for folks that don't know what qualified immunity is, basically taxpayers, anytime there's malfeasance by a cop or a cop does something wrong and they get sued and they lose, taxpayers pay for that. You pay for that. This is a tax issue. And so if we end qualified immunity, we give cops raises, better training. They are then now can be insured by whatever insurance company. And if they have too many citations, then they won't be insured in the state of New York to be a cop anymore. So now when we talk about the CCRB here in the city, this is a local show, right? Talk about the CCRB and strengthening them. The thing that New York knows most is business. Insurance is a business. If we need to use that as a way to reinforce law enforcement accountability, civil rights strengthening of those laws and what we're owed as citizens, then yes, we need to start going down that legislative path. And so there are many different points here to gun control, to criminal justice reform and law enforcement accountability, but we need to have that open conversation with new ideas and the political will to do it. And I think the kids are all right. You know, going back to everything that you were saying, Maria, about seeing that line, the kids getting into college, you know, even, you know, First Amendment right, talking about the story that happened to them in the 80s with gangster rap up into the 90s that I remember the FTC going after and Tipper Gore and everybody else. Like, that was a story being told. And so when it comes to all of these things, we need to make sure that we're all at the table. And I think the number one thing we can do is getting the youth out to vote. And we're going to start seeing a change here. The kids are all right. We got to get that youth out to vote and opening up voting access to get all these different points to work.
Fantastic what you just said, because I think that could be a subject for another show that we can discuss those issues that you just mentioned.
Thank you.
I mean, that the importance it is that people being asked to perform a good job, and now without being criminalized, because some of the police officers are being, you know, people when they hear police, they feel that they are going to be in trouble from the beginning. But when I have a crisis in my house, I call 911 to make sure that they come and respond to those needs. So I think that we should, we should talk about that in another show.
Community policing. We can do a show on it.
Yeah.
I'll write you down.
Yes, I concur.
Invite a guest.
Yeah.
So
I would love to come back.
one of the things that I have I've been watching in our community about as far as the education is concerned. If you recall, 25, 30 years ago, I recall that we have in our district, District 6, that there was so much trouble how to build school. There was no money there. Everybody's putting a no, 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 and everything. It took some of us a lot of work to make sure that they open up more schools. Now the education system, it has, I mean, they have to increase the budget because not only for the academic but also for security. That's another issue that schools have to be safe, and but also one of the other things that Al, we're talking about, the I just saw in the New York Times this week about the money being not allocated enough for social services within a school,
Mm,
and
mm,
mental services, and support services for the student. When a teacher sees a child that is in a crisis, should not call, the first person should not be calling a police officer. If there is a social worker or a nurse within the schools, and that is something that the legislature, have to take in consideration. How can we, the money for that is increased, so we don't tag or label a child as a problem child when we don't see the situation that a child is living within.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is our responsibility as people who, that are interested in education and the well-being
Yeah.
of those kids, that are they, we are providing the services that are needed. So I just don't know
Yeah.
how, right now in the legislations, that is looked into.
I think part of that, Maria, and thank you again. All of this is relevant to the holistic approach to resolving gun violence in our communities. Um, if you have somewhere else to be, then you're not going to be presumably with the wrong crowd. If there are more social workers in these schools, then there's a greater chance that that child will end up in trouble. Because what we're talking about right now are 14 and 12 to 14-year olds that are shooters. And so we have to unpack how is that happening. But we have something close to like 70,000 people a night that are homeless, and a large percentage of those are families. So you have children that don't know what it's like to live in a house or live in an apartment because they've been in a shelter basically all their life. And they could be 5 years old, they could be 4 years old. So when you look at that, and that has to be part of the consideration. I'm not saying that's the all and the end all, but we have to look at that, and we have to make sure that there's funding available. And Noble talked about the monies that Senator Jackson initiated the lawsuit, and they finally won it years ago.
years ago.
And I think 2 years ago they made the first installment, but
Right.
that's a long way to go. And
Yep.
the rest of the money comes at the discretion of the sitting governor at any given year in
Oh
terms of
man.
what's coming back. And so those things are happening. And when we look at our children, let me get myself in trouble. When we look at our children and the atrocities that they face, and we talk about public safety, we don't have the right to turn our nose up at anybody. If there is anyone in law enforcement that's out of step, we need to check that. But equally, if there are people in our community that are out of step, we need to check them too. And I question, where are some of these good groups that you can find at the moment, at a moment's drop, if there's an allegation against the cop? If there's an allegation, proven or not, real or not, there's a crowd ready to run them out of town, lynch them. And I think we should take the appropriate steps whenever any officer has done something outside of their job description. But where is that outcry when Miss Johnson loses her son to Miss Smith? Where's the indignation that everybody runs out on the street and we say no more, not on our block? That's public safety, not getting yourself in harm's way, but starting to have those community conversations that you would have if you were talking about an officer that may or may not have done something as you stand on the street corner or at a vigil. Let's have that conversation before and be role players so that our children have alternatives, because you can't legislate your way out of this, you can't police your way out of it, and you can't just throw money at it. One of the things that I know works was we started the prayer walks in public housing in 2008. And a lot of people looked at me and said, well, why are you doing that? It doesn't make sense. It's not going to make a difference. But that's what was on my heart to do. That's what I received. And we did it. We got a call from then the police commissioner to say, hey, I want to talk to you about what's happened. I said, well, what happened? And he said, the crime statistics in this community for the last 2 years has gone down, and there's been no gunfire. There was no budget. There was not a committee of 12 to figure out what we're going to do. It was people in the community owning their community and saying, this is my part of what I can do. And what I say to the people that are listening, what role can you do? You don't have to be me, do you? And I think Noble said it earlier, you don't have to be a legislator. Where are you at? What is your contribution to the mess that we're in? And leave something that people can walk away with. I pulled up something, Noble, when you were talking about police misconduct. And what this does, and it was signed by the governor. I haven't hung it on the wall yet. It's been laying around for a couple of years. But the idea is that if there's an officer that witnesses another officer do some type of misconduct, they are obligated to have to speak to that when investigation. They don't have a free pass. And we passed that and that was an amendment to Chapter 106 in 2020. So there are little pieces that you can kind of do. But the big picture, to your point, if a doctor or a dentist or anyone else has a problem, they have to put up a lot of money for the malpractice, and they get the ride. So it's a fight. But I say to everybody out there, I don't know how much time we have. We're fighting. We're willing to fight. Are you
don't kill the feed before I build on this. I was going to say, don't kill the feed before I build on this. Because here's something. Look, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We need to be doing everything we can to make sure our children live that, right? I don't want to be talking in this budget about some stadium in Buffalo when we are owed $4.9 billion to our public education system. And like Assemblyman Al Taylor said, we only have a small down payment on that. But yet $600 billion for a stadium? And it's like, look, I know our legislatures are doing what they can. But when it comes to being in lockstep, it should be a no-brainer to fund our youth. Then community policing, making sure they can live that life of happiness in safety, right? And safety from literally all sides of the danger gamut here. Progress is a long arc. I know that these things take time. Like a lot of the things that, older millennials and younger, whatever, my age get hung up on is people always think we want things now. I don't think that's really the case. We get frustrated because we can be doing things faster. And the thing about all of this is it starts with funding our youth. And we have to do that. And look, we can do 3 episodes on that, Maria. I love to.
No. I am so happy to hear, because this is giving me more material for future discussion in my program, Democratic Dialogue. I wanted to, we only have about like 7-10 minutes, something like that, to to complete our, discussion at our program. I want to take an opportunity to not to include our assembly person in this few minutes that I want to remind the people who are watching our show, because I know that I'm a district leader, that I'm a state committee, and the president of the 33rd Community Council of the Police here, which happened to be the second, the precinct number 2 in the entire city of New York. We have reduced the crime to no crime. We haven't had a shooting here. And it was like, compared to last year, I mean, we haven't had a shooting on the 3-3. So I had to congratulate our police officers and our
They do a great job at the 3-3 and the 3-4. No doubt about it.
Now, let me just take an opportunity. I need to remind people that on June 28th, we're going to have a Democratic primaries. I need people to come out and vote, to do an educator voting. You just cannot vote for someone because you like someone smiling and things like that. You have to educate yourself about the quality of the people who are going to be electing. It's really is, it's important. We're going to have judicial, elections that we need to pay attention to. We need better judges, or We need good judges in our, in our court system. We need good people to be responsible for every issue that concerns all of us in our communities. So I think that my political thing is that make sure that you vote. Look for the early voters, because there are 10 days before the primary. You have a right to vote. You don't have to wait until the last day. You have to register. Last day of registration to vote on the primary is Friday. Make sure you got that right. And look for the places. And now, because we have new lines, new changes within our elections district, senatorial, state, and congressional, is impacting on the way that we are going to be voting and the places that we are going to be exercising our rights to vote. So make sure that you look for that information. And if not, I think everybody knows my number anyway.
It's true.
Well, no, but don't call the assembly, my friend. Okay, so I'm just leaving him out of this.
Well, I want to say yes. You are allowed to call your assemblyman. My number is 212-234-1430. Operational hours are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 4. My email is taylora@nyassembly.gov. And I just want to clarify for purposes of information going out correctly. There are 2 primaries this summer. One will be June 28th, which is Tuesday, and then the next one's going to be in August. Because of a redistricting issue and the courts had to get involved, they split the New York State Assembly will be, in other races, will take place on Tuesday, June 28th, but the congressional race and the Senate race will take place in August because the lines were redrawn after the court ruling and people are getting to know their district. I am in a new district because of the redistricting, which happens every 10 years. So seek out information if you don't know it. I won't say what and who I will be endorsing because this is not the platform for me or the space, but I am up for re-election. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're civic-minded, civic engagement, and do those things. We're fighting hard to make sure that people have access to the ballot, making sure that people have access and are informed on a state level, just so we can keep it going. But on a national level, across our country, they're rolling back rights to vote. And so many people are impacted by that. So I will say this, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Thank you so much for Maria for allowing me to spend some time. And Noble, it's good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Noble and I are also running for re-election.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to know that Noble is doing a fantastic job. I am doing as well as I can, as much as I can. Nothing can stop me unless God says,
Yeah.
let's move forward. Make sure that people come and vote on the on primaries, and you know that you have to do that because so many people die for the right to vote.
Yes.
So this
Absolutely.
is really a joy for me to have both of you in my program, and you gave me enough materials to bring you back soon.
Good.
Right. So now we have about like 4 minutes to close, to wrap up. So Noble goes first, assembly person goes first, and then probably I won't have time. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
No problem. I'll just take a minute because I know I definitely want to make sure you have enough. Look, state committee member, community board member, district leader, Maria, thank you so much for this invite. It's always awesome to talk with you two. We are so lucky to live here in the 71st Assembly District. The folks of this district really care, and I care, and you guys
That's the
care.
reason why I brought you here, because I know that you care and you're doing a great job.
Man, I got 2 kids in this district. My wife and I have been here since 2008. And I just want to see, again, progress is that long arc. We continue to get better. It's not overnight, but every single day, every hours that we spend doing volunteer work, things get better. Make primaries, start the habit of voting. Primaries, general election. Primaries, general election. Vote every year, twice, people, please. And June 28th, please vote for State Committee Member Maria Luna and State Committee Member Nobles Crawford. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
Wow. Noble, great sharing time with you. I'm elated. Maria, thank you so much. Listen, I love my job. I love my job. I love my job. And for the folks that are listening, don't talk about it. Be about it. If you see something that needs to be fixed, you may be that relief in some instances, but feel free to call on people like Noble and Maria who are community fixtures, and you won't just see them on social media. You'll see them picking up trash. You'll see them feeding their neighbors,
Yes, sir.
because that's what community is all about. I am so proud to work with so many stakeholders, whether it's Community League of the Heights, whether it's the Dominican Women's Development Center, the New York African Chorus Ensemble. It goes on and on and on. Hands That Make a Difference, Literacy Inc. There's so many people in our communities that are doing the work. We are rich, 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 and in terms of the people that give a damn, if I can say that.
I'm so
thank you all
proud of the
so
work that
much.
you're doing. And also, I have to remind people that on this particular primary, we're having a race for surrogate court and supporting Hillary Gingle. I hope the people will do that. I'm also supporting the Governor Kathy Hochul. That is my, those are my choices. So I think that I think we have a great team. I am really grateful that both of you were here with me. I'll bring you back soon.
Good.
So answer my phone when I call. I know that you do. Thank you
Yes, we
so
will
much.
continue.
Thank you, Manhattan neighborhood.
Always.
Fred Pinto, Zenaida Mendez.
Thank you.
I don't think I have that much time. But anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a
Thank you,
good
thank you, thank you.
Father's Day, which is going to be June 12th.
Oh,
Remember,
nice.
Gotta
and
get that
also
card
pray
out.
for the people in the Ukraine. Let's pray for the people in Ukraine and for those that are in need. We all need to pray. I am a believer
Amen.
in prayer. So thank God that we live in our community that as of now has been safe for many of the ills that are being suffered all over, all over the world. But I don't think we have that much time left. I think good night. Thank you so much. And I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you. God
God
bless
bless
you.
you.
Everybody have a great night. Thanks again, Maria. Super appreciate it.
Thank,
Noble.
Thank you, Maria. Take it
thank
easy,
you.
Assemblyman.
Juana.